Hey y'all, this is Kim. So there's two documents remaining in this JFK files for part 28, but this one is kind of illegible and I'm not gonna even try. I'll put it in the description. See, they flipped some of the pages upside down. It kind of messed up and they're kind of hard to read that, but it almost looks similar to this one, but it's I think just different information. One of them is more detailed than the other. So we'll just put both of these in there and then you can look at it and go back through it, see if you can figure it out. I'm not going to try. So there's a secret sensitive, 27th of November, 1962, November 19 or 27th November, 1962 by DDP or whatever with DCI and approved generally in principle by UCI maybe or DCI. Okay, so Director of Central Intelligence, Deputy Director Plans, Operational Plan for Continuing Operations Against Cuba. One is action. This memorandum is for your information and pursuant to your requests. Recommendations for actions are continued in paragraph 5 below. The purpose of this memorandum is to delineate an operational plan for the action which we believe should be taken by CIA against Cuba for the predictable future. In summary, the plan provides for continuing, even intensifying the intelligence effort against Cuba and for the reorientation of the current effort into long-term denied area type of operation of the highest priority. Assumptions: A, the United States government will give public assurances that provided no nuclear or offensive weapons are present or reintroduced into Cuba, and provided Cuba does not take action to threaten the peace and security of the Western Hemisphere, the United States does not intend to invade Cuba or support invasion of Cuba. These assurances will preclude any meaningful CIA action on a phased basis to provoke a revolt inside Cuba, since unless there are major changes in operation and internal conditions in Cuba, such a revolt, if provoked, would be totally destroyed by Cuban counteraction in a matter of hours or at the most a few days unless supported by a major United States military commitment. In addition, the non-invasion assurances, as a practical matter, will preclude invading Cuba on the pretext of a contrived provocation such as an attack on Guantanamo. C, CIA operatives involving a high noise level and a distinct element of attributability, particularly paramilitary guerrillas and commando type operations, will be unacceptable as a matter of policy. The Castro communist regime will remain in power for the indefinite future with its security and control apparatus relatively intact and with the capability not only of crushing unsupported resistance activity, but of making operational conditions in Cuba increasingly difficult. While it is possible that recent and future developments, including the Soviet action in removing the offensive weapons from Cuba, may serve to weaken and discredit Castro, there is as yet no hard indication that the control of the Castro communist regime over Cuba has been substantially weakened. The United States assurances of no invasion and no support of an invasion will, in effect, constitute giving to Castro and his regime a certain degree of sanctuary. This will severely damage the morale and motivation of anti-regime Cubans, both inside and outside of Cuba, which will make it increasingly difficult for us to recruit agents, maintain agents already recruited, and continue or intensify our intelligence and other efforts against Cuba and the Castro communist regime. Despite the above factors, higher authority probably will continue heavy pressure on the CIA for a maximum effort against Cuba and may even continue to contend that the ultimate objective is to overthrow the Castro communist regime. This is an unrealistic objective, however, except on a very long-term basis as the United States government, we believe, will be willing or will be unwilling in the immediate future to commit troops to support such an overthrow. The United States government, in its overt dealings with the Cuban exiles, probably will not express the above factors to them in the context or with the bluntness stated here. In view of these factors, the so-called Track 2 course of action, i.e., unlimited support of Cuban exiles and exile groups with no real control or objective purposes, in the hope that these groups will be able to shake the Castro regime will, although unrealistic, become increasingly attractive at various levels in the United States government as a matter of policy, political pressures, and economic pressure, short of blockade raids and aggressive sabotage against Cuba, will be continued. In view of the above assumptions, paramilitary, commando, and sabotage operations, except in rare selective instances, will serve little purpose. Also, they will be counterproductive since, if undertaken, they will make the collection of intelligence more difficult and should only be undertaken in those very few instances where an unusually high return can be demonstrated. Regardless of what other pressures are placed on CIA for action against Cuba, it would appear clear that higher authority will insist on a continued, even intensified intelligence coverage of Cuba. J, in view of the policy factors, an increased use of facilities, real estate, and basing outside the United States, particularly in Latin America, will be both necessary and desirable. Adequate serial reconnaissance of Cuba will continue. To the objectives, based on the above assumptions, the following objectives appear to be proper for continuing CIA operations against Cuba. A, take all feasible clandestine action to isolate and assist in isolating the Castro communist regime in Cuba from the rest of the Western Hemisphere and the rest of the free world. And B, to the maximum extent possible, discredit the Castro communist regime in Cuba and in the Western Hemisphere and the rest of the world. So I'm going to stop this here and then probably have to do like 3 or 4 videos on this one. But anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.